Hello and welcome to another Back to Jerusalem podcast. I'm Eugene Bach, your host for this time, and I'm coming to you live on delay from somewhere within the borders of China this time. And I have my good friend on with me that's been a friend of mine for several years, Will, who works in the Back to Jerusalem office. He's just returned from the field helping with the Back to Jerusalem efforts in Turkey. Will, thank you so much for joining us, brother. It's great to have you with us.
It's good to be with you, Eugene. So it's good to be back on a podcast with you. It's been a while. It's sad to know why we're back on, but it's really good to be back on air again with a podcast with you.
Yeah, I think I can remember some of our podcasts that we've done in the past, which were a lot of fun. One that I can remember particular was you and I sat outside the meeting. I don't know if you remembered it or not, but we were in a place called Wystad or Wairika. It was like Wairika or something in California. It was a small church up in Northern California, and you and I sat out under the night stars and we're doing fun podcasts, joking around, talking about the tours with Brother Yun.
I remember that. It was freezing. I was like shivering my teeth off. But yes, I do remember that.
So there was an earthquake in Turkey. The whole world has seen it. It's been one of the most devastating earthquakes in the recent history of Turkey, and the largest earthquake this year. Just devastated an entire nation, brought down entire cities, killing hundreds of people. And you were there on a special mission to go in and help with the rebuilding process. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, I was there. I just returned. I think it was yesterday. I just came back from it. So there's still a lot of it that's fresh in my mind, just being there in the center of it. And as you mentioned, just the devastation of the earthquake. You hear about it on the news. I think the official number is now like over 50,000 people that are reported to have died in this earthquake.
Wow, 50,000.
But the reality of it is from what I'm hearing from people in the field and people connected with it, they're thinking it's going to be more like 200 to 250,000 deaths. And that sounds crazy when I hear that, but when you're actually there and you're driving through the cities, and this affected like 4 or 5 different cities that were just devastated by this earthquake, and we were only in 2 of them. We stayed in Iskenderun is where we stayed, and so driving through the streets there, you could just see the damage of it. But most of the work we did in Antioch, which is the biblical city of Antioch, and that's where we did most of our work. And just driving through that city and just seeing the destruction it did, it's easy to understand why people are saying the higher numbers of like 200,000 plus, because there's just buildings down everywhere.
One of the things that people saw with Antioch, because Antioch is known because, that is, if you're not familiar with Antioch or you're not familiar with the story about what was considered to be Asia in biblical times, and it's still Asia. Turkey is a part of the Asian continent. In fact, Turkey is where Asia and Europe, the 2 continents, come together. But this is, in the Bible, is often referred to as Asia Minor. And Antioch is the place where we first use the term Christian, or the term Christian is first used according to the Bible. So not only is this an ancient location for Christians, it's still quite a number of Christians that are there today. So we have Christians that have been hit pretty hard from the earthquake. And when you were there, did you see any government effort that was focused on helping with the relief effort, or was it just private organizations?
There's a mixture of both. In fact, the government is involved with some of the private organizations where they have funding from the government. But the government, for the most part, has moved on from like search and rescue and helping people rebuild to removal of rubble. And so that's where we saw the presence. As you're driving through the city, there's really, the scenes that you're seeing now is just lines and lines of dump trucks, track hose everywhere that are just gathering up the rubble, loading it onto trucks and driving it off. And so oftentimes you would see the presence of like police officers on scene. And that's where a lot of the government seems to be focusing now, is just getting the streets, getting the buildings cleaned up and working from there. But I know some of the projects. The one project we had been involved with at Tent City in Iskandarun was at an expo center. It was built, I don't know the exact year, but it was built sometime in the 2000s, 20 something, that they'd used for a World Expo. And so the government opened that up for a church to come in that is running it and set up tents in the expo center. And so they have about 120 tents that are set up there. And it's sponsored some by the government, some by the church. So there is a presence of the government, but most of the people I've talked to that are involved with the government are frustrated because of all the red tape and the slowness of moving with governments. Where if they're not involved with government entities, they can move quicker and they can do a lot more.
When you were talking about, as many as 200,000 people already confirmed, about 50,000. I mean, just 50,000 alone. Many people may not know this, but that's as many people as live in the nation of Greenland. Talking about 200,000, you're talking about nations like Tonga, nations like Seychelles, nations like Guam. These nations don't have as many people as just died in Turkey. So when you were there, Will, and you were serving together, can you tell us a little bit about the people that you were coming in contact with? Did you have an opportunity to share it all? The families that you were coming in contact with, what was their situation? What were you doing? What was the Back to Jerusalem efforts doing to help after the earthquake?
So we went, it was a team of four of us, and we went for the specific reason to build tiny homes for people, to get them out of tents, to get them up off the ground. And so we got to get into several homes. Situations were different. A lot of the places we went into, because the homes we were building, the person who organized them lives in Turkey, was the one who was arranging where they were built, and he was being very specific about where they got built. So he wanted to make sure that all the houses we built were on private land, so that the government wouldn't come in later and remove them. And so we were building them in private property, oftentimes in the courtyards of homes of people. Some of the homes that the people we were building them for were actually still livable, that they were staying in their homes, but they were having this house built for other people that they knew that were going to come live on their property. So we did get to interact some with the people, but with our limited language skills, we didn't get to interact a lot. We had one team member who had an app on his phone who was kind of our techie guy, and he was doing a lot of interacting through a translate program. It wasn't Google Translate. He had an app. I'm not sure what it was called. It was actually working better than Google Translate. So we did a lot of communication that way. We did have contact with somebody who is living in Istanbul, who came down on one occasion, and their family was able to communicate with people and spend some time with families and love on them and just talk to them and hear their stories. In fact, because of that, they were able to meet other families that are in need of homes, and they're working at trying to get homes for people that they came in contact with. And so that's what I really was encouraged about, is that there is contact from the outside that are continuing to follow up with some of these families. I know the one place we built, they had a contact with a church, is the one that arranged to get the house for them. And the comment was made something to the extent as like, we recognize that these houses are coming to us from the church, and we know that church, and we think that we're going to go over and maybe spend a little more time with them and visit them some, just to find out what's going on and why they're taking the time to build these homes for us.
And can you describe the facilities, these little homes that you're building?
Yeah, they're actually made out of, mostly the frames are made out of plywood. It's about a 1-inch plywood that are cut out in CNC machines. So it's kind of like a Lego home. So they have the side walls and the roof and the floors and the center wall and stuff is all cut out of plywood. And they have like a tongue and groove that you put them down and you pound them together and you make the frame. And so after the frame is set up on top of, we were using metal to put down on the ground, and just whatever we could find around to level the frame out, and then built these houses on top of that. And so once they were completed, they were covered with plywood inside and out, and then the roof and the two sides were made out of metal. I know there's an article coming up I think we have it coming up soon. There might be some already that have pictures of these houses. If not, we'll try to make sure we at least get some pictures of these houses on our website, so you can go back to Jerusalem.com and learn more. But they were 2-room houses. Everything was simple. They had like little louvers, windows in the back that could open or shut so they could have airflow through them. There was a functioning door in the front. There were just 2 rooms inside of them, and they were roughly 14 feet by 16 feet. So they weren't big, but they were I would say about twice the size of a lot of the tents that were set up. It gave people a little bit more privacy with 2 rooms. And the biggest thing is, compared to tents, it was getting people up off the ground. So they were elevated enough that if there was rain and stuff, that the water could flow through and under the house and not through the house. And so people that we built them for all seemed very grateful that they had these homes.
When you were there, can you describe kind of what the rest of your team looked like? I mean, I know that you had gone there. You had someone that was with you that was one of our ambassadors. What did the rest of the team look like? Because I know that there was at least there was the desire. I don't know if it actually worked out that there would be like a group of Amish that would travel with you. Did that pan out?
We had a lot of interest. A lot of them said that if we take another team in, that they would be interested in traveling and going with us. But most of them, because we left on pretty short notice, their time schedule didn't fit for them. And so there was a lot of interest from that community, but we didn't actually have any with us. We did have one guy who came with us who was from a Mennonite church, and he has a background in building. Myself was there. And then, as you mentioned, we had an ambassador who was with us. And then he had an acquaintance that he brought with him who actually does ministry at a campus. So it was a diverse group, but we all worked together well, and we all had our parts. 2 of us were sort of professional builders. The other 2 had a lot of knowledge about building, and our ambassador was very well at communication. So we kind of called him our communicator. He was the person who was using the app and doing a lot of communicating for us and stuff. So just 4 of us, but we worked together well, and were able to put up several houses while we were there and do a lot of work at the tent city for people.
Yeah, I love the fact that you were able to do this because, I mean, you and I, when we first connected, we connected on the mission field when you were serving in northern Thailand. And then after some time, we hadn't seen each other in several years. And I saw you again. You were living in Pennsylvania, and you were running a contracting business at the time. So you had that background. Is that one of the reasons why this appealed to you? That, I mean, because you do have that construction background.
I mean, yes and no. I do have the construction background, and I enjoy doing that. But more of the pull was just the need to be there, that the people were in desperate need. And so when I was there, I wasn't just building, but I was also looking at opportunities we might have to serve in the future and to help with the people. So, I mean, just a confession is I'm always functioning better when I'm outside of the U.S. than I am when I'm in the U.S. I just love to be in the field working with people and helping people. And as sobering as it was just good to be there. I mean, I just really enjoyed, as hard as it was, even talking to the people and hearing their stories, but just being able to be there for them and with them. It doesn't feel like we did much, but for each person that we were with, we were able to like bring hope and give them hope. And I just loved being there and being able to be that hope just for a little bit for the people that we were able to cross paths with.
Love it. Well, brother, I'm so glad to see you back. It was wonderful seeing the work that you've been doing, and also to see the photos that you sent while you were on the field. For those of you that are listening to this podcast, you can go to our archives after this podcast is posted, and you will be able to see the work that Will and other Back to Jerusalem partners did in Turkey, serving with a lot of the funds that you guys have sent to us. We've had several ways of working in this disaster area, both in Turkey and in Syria. At the moment, while I'm doing this podcast, we actually have a Chinese team that is serving in Syria right now with those that were hit on the Syrian side of the earthquake. Though Westerners are able to serve in Turkey as well as Chinese and other nationalities as well, Syria presents a unique opportunity for Chinese because not many other nationalities outside of the Russians and the Chinese are able to work in Syria. And so this has been one of those opportunities that highlights the importance of partnering together with those with the Back to Jerusalem vision, allowing Chinese to go to places that other nationalities simply are not able to go. And so as you have been sending support and funds in the month of February and March, those funds have been going to several different people that have been serving with Back to Jerusalem in Syria as well as in Turkey. And Will was one of those teams. He was one of the individuals that was on the ground doing construction, setting up temporary houses and shelter for those that were hit the hardest by the earthquake. Brother, thank you so much for joining us for the Back to Jerusalem podcast, and thank you so much for sharing about what you saw while you were there.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. And if I can just say quickly, if there's others who want to go and serve, just reach out to us, office@backtojerusalem.com, and I can put you in direct contact with the people in the field. They were mentioning that if a team wanted to come and wanted to raise the funds for the houses themselves, so you'll be fully funding the building of the houses, you'll be fully funding your trip by yourself, you won't be going with Back to Jerusalem, you'll be going directly with the people in the field. But if that's something that you would be interested in doing, putting a team together, raising funds for building the houses, just reach out to us and you can send your own team and take your own team over and build houses like we were to help the people in Turkey.
And that's office@backtojerusalem.com?
Yes, office@backtojerusalem.com, and I'll put you in direct contact with the guy in the field who is coordinating the houses.
Awesome. You want to serve in Turkey? Do you want to put together a team to go and serve in the earthquake zone of Turkey? You can put together a team and go there and support those that have lost everything in one of the biggest earthquakes this year. Reach out to Will. Talk directly to him. He'll put you in contact with the people that will be able to help you do just that. Office@backtojerusalem.com. You can send him an email. Office@backtojerusalem.com. Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure.
And thank you so much for joining us for another Back to Jerusalem podcast. Again, I'm Eugene Bach, your host for this time, coming to you live on delay from somewhere within the borders of China. God bless.